Hi, it's Doug DeVitri with the Co-Track Pro podcast, and I can't wait for you to hear about our next guest, Maryann Petri. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
You've been through a lot. You've seen a lot. I want you to tell me kind of, I guess, from your experience and how you got started and where you are today, how that's been able to help other people.
Well, through this journey through the corrupt family court systems, parents contact me, and I am not an attorney. I can only give them my opinion of what I would do in a situation that they present to me. I mostly recommend just to try to stay out of family court, which is very difficult to do when you're dealing with a personality disorder. And what I have compiled is the 3 volumes of Raised by These Wolves that tell parents stories that I hope will help other parents see how these parents got involved in the court systems.
Sure, and something a statistic you gave me that's just absolutely frightening. 22 million people are experiencing parental alienation. Now, how does that even start? How does that even begin?
Well, it can be, and this is my opinion, it can be subtle. In my case, it was subtle with a 10-year-old making a comment that was off the cuff that I didn't understand. And I thought, well, maybe she's just growing up and she's, advancing, whatever. So, but it can also be like a light switch. And I have had parents tell me that, oh, things were going great with Johnny last week, and I get him this week, and it's like comments are flying off and nasty. It can happen overnight. I'm sorry, but it can.
Yeah, and we're talking to children who like don't even really understand what they're saying to their parents, right? And like that seems to me like it would be psychological abuse.
It is. And luckily, it is in the DSM-5, V995.51, child psychological abuse, which is parental alienation. I know parents want parental alienation in the DSM-5. I don't know when that will happen, but the fallback on that is the child psychological abuse V995.51. And these parents, I'm not for putting parents in jail, but the stories I have heard from several individuals and parents that call me, I think when a judge holds a parent in contempt for parental alienation, they should um, have the child go with the loving fit parent for 90 days, that protocol I'm sure you've heard about. And then they can have that other parent can have supervised visits because that's how you're going to stop this child psychological abuse from happening. And it's so hard to deprogram them, even when you get them back for a weekend. If you get them Friday night, you've got to deprogram them into Saturday afternoon. And then you only get so much time, and then you have to return them Sunday by 6 p.m. And then they're back to the grind.
Sure, and you've written a couple books on this, right? One of them is the Dismantling Family Court Corruption, and this is it's such strong language, and I would say that the courts probably say, well, we're not corrupt, we're just following the law. How does something where we're supposed to be following the rule of law and court procedures turn into somewhat would be believed would be corruption?
Well, in my case, the opposing attorney and the judge were BFFs in the DA's department for 3 to 4 years. And my attorney told me this. And so I went to recuse the judge and due to this fact, and he said he's not going to recuse himself because he knows this case better than anybody else. However, this is only day one of trial, so I don't know how he knows all this stuff. So it's, in my opinion, the judiciary is going to destroy this country through the inside out, using the children through these court systems and turning them against the parent even more. The judges are complicit in the child psychological abuse, which is the parental alienation. They're allowing it. They are also child psychological abusers themselves.
Wow. Um, Gosh, that seems extremely threatening considering conflict is on the rise, divorce is on the rise, parents using weaponizing mental health, right? Even if you go get support, it's used against you. Like,
Mhm.
when does this ever end?
Well, if they have an avenue to get even with you, they're going to use it. Even something, let's say when you were dating them before you married them, and you told them something very, something about what a family member said to you. Like maybe the family member said, "Oh, you can't get along with anybody." They'll keep that in their mind. And then when they go through the marriage and then divorce you, they're going to say, "Well, you see, you can't get along with anybody." And somehow they'll use that in a court setting. It happens.
Yeah. Yeah, and so like how do we the question now becomes is kind of how do we fix this? How do we bring logic into it? How do we bring morality into the conversation? When you're working with parents who are kind of at their last end of it because they've been through the ringer, how can we support those who have been through this process?
I always tell them, talk to people that get it. Sometimes the relatives are tired of hearing about it. So don't talk to, the relatives. If the relative says, "How's it going?" Well, it's going. But go to a parent that understands it and discuss it with them. I've got parents calling me, I get it. I've actually made friends throughout this whole journey. I have more friends than I could, and they are friends, genuine friends. But I always tell them, try to avoid going into that family court. I think the best way to shut it down is if we can get parents to co-parent if they can, provided again, if you're not dealing with a personality disorder, but just don't go in there. In fact, I was talking to a guy that was fixing my sliding glass doors, and I said, "Hey, do you know anything about family court?" I'm so nosy. But he said, "Well, my ex and I, we went in there and we had the judge talk to us, and we were just looking at each other like, what the heck? And we walked out of there and we agreed to settle things ourselves." And it's like, thank God. Okay, so there's someone that can do it. Okay. So that is the only way we can shut this down. And just because you're going through a divorce doesn't mean you have to run into a courtroom. You can work it out. I had done a settlement with my ex. We did it ourselves. We co-parented for 10 years until a woman that worked in the courthouse came along and inserted herself into the co-parent relationship and into the lives of the kids. So I would also suggest that when you decide to put in your settlement, okay, whoever remarries, they cannot interfere in the co-parent relationship. That has got to be in writing. And
And you're saying that it's not like third party interference. It's not part of the co-parenting plan
right.
typically.
It's an A-B conversation, see you out the door. So it has got to stay that way between the co-parents. It's now a business relationship. And they've got to understand that. And I even told my spouse when I married him, I said, "Look, if you have problems with the kids, tell me what it is. I'll deal with it. I won't let them talk to you bad. If they're talking to you bad, you tell me. I mean, you are allowed to say, don't talk to me like that. But if there's anything, let me handle it and I'll handle it with the co-parent." I was able to do that. Apparently, my ex was not.
Mm. Yeah, and so when you have another your co-parent doesn't want to participate, has the money to be able to keep going you back to court, I imagine that they could also use their partner as a proxy to attack you as well, right?
Right, right. It's amazing who they'll put on the stand, and on the witness stand, everybody perjures themselves. And and I tell people this when they call me up and they're like, "No, that can't happen. Is that true?" It's like, yeah, I know we were all taught that judges are good and they're going to help, and these people are going to help us. And I'm telling them, I said, no, people perjure themselves, even CPS on the witness stand, and that's what's going to happen. And I mean, I've had people yell on the phone, no, this can't happen. And it's it's very sad to break this news to people, but unfortunately, we have a legal system that is not listening to the loving, fit parent that wants the best for the child.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can imagine that the long-term consequences on the children can be absolutely devastating. They're learning from their best teachers who are their parents.
Right,
So how do you even prevent that? And at what point do you just let go because there's nothing more you can do?
right. I mean, I've had to let go and realize what they have done is actually what they do is they turn these children into personality disorders. So what that is doing is when these kids grow up and get married, now that poor person who marries them is going to have to deal with a personality disorder with mommy or daddy issues. And this is not good because they're manufacturing, generating, cranking out kids that are going to have personality disorders.
It just seems like if this is where it starts, right? Like because you have okay, we can adapt to this situation, right? But better than adapting would be either preventing it from happening in the first place, right? Or correcting the surfacing issue, which may be a couple of different things. What would you say could be some of the corrective issues that either parents can take or advocates can take in helping supporting those individuals?
Just give them, the support, not what they need to hear. They've got to hear the truth. And it's hard to accept. A lot of people say, oh, Johnny will come back when they turn 18. Just wait till they turn 18. It's like what people have to understand is that the brainwashing is so strong. And this is what happened to me is the ex was able to buy them cars and buy them off. So in order to keep them away from me even longer as adults, here, let me throw money at you. And that's what happens as well. And that's why, I did write the book, Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, because it would not stop. And to this day, it's still not stopping. So why taking the kids was not enough? So
Yeah,
really, it's a handbook for parents going through this system to understand the playbook. I mean,
yeah, gosh,
I should have called it the playbook.
yeah. Uh, it almost leaves you speechless, right? Like you just don't even know what to say. And I think for any of us who are kind of going through this, it brings it closer to God, right? And put
Oh,
it in His
definitely.
hands.
Definitely, I have said to God a lot, multiple times, God, you deal with these people. And I had my first opposing counsel, and I was saying, God, deal with her, because I have never seen anyone behave so crazy in a courtroom. And I'm talking prancing around a courtroom, and I'm like, can you wear a moto jacket that's pleather and patent leather and pink high pumps in a courtroom? It's like this is not appropriate dress wear either. And it was a nightmare because I did not, and I had an attorney at the time, and I've never seen behavior like this. I was a psychiatric nurse for 4 years too. And those patients behaved better than her. So I said, God, deal with her. And God listened because within 3 months, I get a letter from my lawyer stating that she has cancer and she's withdrawing. So now we're going to end up with her spouse, who I could deal with a lot easier. Yeah. So God was with me on this journey. And of course, I was failing at every hearing, even with an attorney, because it's all rigged. And parents need to know that it's rigged. So I was saying, God, my spouse was saying, you're losing everything. Where's your God? Where's your God? And it's like, he's going to be showing up. I kept saying, God, you deal with this judge. Well, on March 2nd, 2015, he took my boys away on false accusations via CPS. And I still prayed to God. And anyway, put my faith in God, you deal with him. On March 2nd of 2017, he died of pancreatitis. So now he was answering to a higher God.
Gosh, we never look. It's like we never wish this on
No,
anybody. I don't. I certainly don't.
no, and don't,
I pray for my enemies, right? That they
right?
hopefully their hearts will soften.
Well,
But
because I tell people, yeah, don't wish evil on anyone. Don't pray that something bad happens. Just put it in God's hands, and God's going to have to deal with them. He's the judge, not them, not you. So just give it to God.
well, Mary, you have a ton of resources that you've been accumulating over the years. Can you talk a little bit about your books and your YouTube channel, which I found absolutely fascinating?
Sure. I mean, I wrote the book Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough in 2020. It eventually became a bestseller like a year and a half later. Then I wrote Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth, which were a bunch of poems I collected. I would wake up at 1 in the morning and I just had a poem coming out of I was just typing it into my phone and I collected them and put them into a book. Then I wrote Raised by These Wolves, how family and federal courts are failing our children. And that became a bestseller out at the gate, as well as Volume 2, which is also a collection of parents' stories raised by these wolves, child trafficking within the foster care and court systems. And Leon Ives wrote the foreword to that one. Brian Vukadinovich did write the opening to the first book. And Judge Mary Elizabeth Bullock wrote the opening, the introduction to Raised by These Wolves. Family and juvenile courts continue to destroy future generations. And it's not stopping. It's like after doing this podcast, Slam the Gavel for, well, since 2020, September of 2020, nothing has changed with these parents' stories. Nothing has changed within the judiciary to stop the collusion, the conflict of interest, handing over children to the abuser.
Yeah, it's I well I you have a tremendous amount of courage, right? For number one, sharing your story and then also acting as an advocate. And I know that there's many advocates that are out there who want the best for children. However, they're tied to something. They can't really speak about it. Um,
Right.
how can these advocates start to stand up for families, even though it might even jeopardize their position in family court?
I also believe that some of these advocates are advocating too soon. They have not healed from what has happened to them through the family court system. Either talk to a therapist, a good one, and move through it. I had a therapist throughout the whole thing, which again, they threw in my face, calling me crazy, right? Because we're all crazy. And even guys they're calling men crazy or whatever.
We're all crazy.
We're all crazy.
I'll
Yeah.
tell people
So
I'm crazy. I'm crazy because I have these crazy ideas.
you're right. Well, I mean, and we have to think outside the box, but people have got to be ready to advocate. And if they're not ready and they're giving poor advice or, just don't advocate. let let others who have been more seasoned just carry the ball. And then when you're ready to advocate, talk to a seasoned advocate and say, how do I begin? Because sometimes they
Yeah.
don't even know how to begin.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really great. What's I appreciate you being a part of this podcast. Well, we're on one, so we can end on a high note here. What are you excited about in terms of the future, especially where technology has now given us a voice, right? Even AI has given us a voice to be able to talk a language we just didn't know how to speak before. What are you most excited about?
Well, I'm excited about the short film. It's a narrative short film called The Mailbox, which people can find on my Slam the Gavel podcast on YouTube. Adam Worth, Emmy Award winning director, directed it, and the actress is Kat King. And they did an excellent job portraying my fear of the mailbox. And I know a lot of parents get their emails from the court, but still some are getting them through the mail. I even talked to one father and he says, I hate the mailbox. It's like, okay, I'm glad a man said it because I've had on my podcast several women say, I'm afraid of the mailbox. It's like I had to literally take my cell phone with me with a friend on the line to go to the mailbox, and I knew what was out there. I already knew what was waiting for me in that mailbox. So I hope this short film will attract attention of producers, someone that would like to make it into either a documentary or a major film, because this has to be brought to light of the suffering of not only the parents, but the children who are our future generations. And it's got to get fixed. And I'm hoping maybe through this mailbox short film, this can start to happen.
Well, that's so great. What I'm going to do is put some of those links in the notes of the podcast. That way people can follow up with you and so they can take a look at it. But again, I just appreciate you and how you show up and supporting families. So I just want to say thank you again.
Well, thank you for having me on, Doug. I really appreciate it. We've got to get the word out. The word has got to get out.